All right, thanks Peggy, and welcome everyone. Thanks for coming to our Introduction to the Texas State Archives webinar, Part 2, Finding Materials. My name is Taylor Fox, and I'm a reference librarian here at TSLAC. If you missed Part 1, my colleague Caroline covered what types of materials are in the Texas State Archives and how to access them, and you can view that recorded webinar on our website. So what today's session covers are finding aids, what they are, where to view them, and how to use them. We'll also cover how you can search for archival materials using the online catalog, and then we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. So first, a little bit about us, Texas State Library and Archives Commission, or TSLAC for short. We are located in downtown Austin, Texas by the Capitol building, and currently our archives reading room is open to the public by appointment only. And we always like to share an overview of TSLAC's mission and the services and programs our agency provides to Texans. Today's webinar is part of our mission to provide Texans access to needed information, and in particular, information that helps you find archival records that we preserve. These are our 3 service areas here, and if you want to learn more about our agency, please visit our website. All right, so let's get started with finding aids. So this photo here is a picture of our State Records Center, and the stacks in our archives building look pretty similar. Lots of records stored in boxes on shelving units, and these boxes, maps, and other record types all have unique identifying numbers that help our staff find them on the shelf. So the key to finding these materials in the state archives are finding aids, also called descriptive guides. And as the name implies, they describe state agency records, manuscripts, maps, photographs, and other types of materials. Finding aids provide a narrative of the agency history, the records, and the organization of the records. In a narrative format. And that can help you learn about other related agencies and record types that you might also want to consider for your research. And a finding aids folder inventory will help you identify which box that you want to have pulled for your research. Most of our finding aids are available online through our website at the link here. And I'll show you now how you can get to this page from our website. So here is a screenshot of our home page. You can click where it says Archives and Reference just underneath the logo in the top left corner. From there, you'll click on Archives and Manuscripts. It's a little icon that looks like a box. And then you can click where it says Descriptive Guides. It's a little icon that looks like a treasure map. That will take you further down the page where there's a section of various guides to collections in the state archives. The 2 that we're going to talk about today are the processed state and local records and the processed manuscript and photograph collections. So we'll start right now talking about the processed state and local records. So this screenshot is just the very top of that web page. The main feature of this web page is a table, which is organized alphabetically by state or local agency name, circled here. So even though it's alphabetical, since the table is quite long, or if you don't know the exact agency name, you can search this web page for a word that you know is part of the agency name, like governor. And you can do that by using Control F, or if you have a Mac, it'll be Command F on your keyboard. And that will pull up the find feature in your browser. So you can type in that keyword that you think is in the agency name, and then press enter, and your browser will skip you ahead to just those instances of that word on the web page. Then under the title column are links to finding aids that are available through Texas Archival Resources Online, or TARO, which is a third-party service that we use to upload our finding aids and make them available for the public to look at. If you see a finding aid listed without a link, those are available in our archives research room, and they're not searchable online. So that's what the volume number is for on the very far right of the table. And since we're only open for appointments right now, you can contact us if you want to look at a finding aid that's not available online, and we can make it available to you by email usually. So you may be wondering, why is it called processed state and local records? Well, it's because this table lists finding aids for records that have been processed, but a portion of our holdings remains unprocessed. So those unprocessed records don't have finding aids and they won't be listed here. So if you don't find what you're looking for, just ask us and we'll be happy to help. So let's say I've looked through this table and I found some records that I want to look at. I'll click on the hyperlinked title and that will take me to a finding aid. So this is what the top of the finding aid looks like. This is just a screenshot of one. So you can see here I've picked one for Texas Court of Criminal Appeals case files. Using the table of contents on the left side, I can navigate through this finding aid to find out more about the records and the agency. The overview will tell me generally, just sort of really broadly, what kind of information I'll find in the records. And I also want to draw your attention to the restrictions section, because that's going to give you information about if there are any access constraints that you need to consider when planning your visit. So for example, with this finding aid, if I look at the restrictions section, I'll see that these case files are in offsite storage. And so that tells me that those records will need to be requested in advance because they need to be ordered and then delivered from an offsite storage facility. I can also see that these files need to be reviewed by an archivist first, so the archivist can remove any sealed documents or review for confidential information. So when I'm interested in looking at these records, those are just some things that I'll want to keep in mind that may add to the amount of time I should plan for in giving the archive staff a heads up. So back to the top of that finding aid, going back to the table of contents, there's a section called Description of Series, and that's where it'll start going into the inventory of the records. So let's say I click on that. That'll take me further down the finding aid to that description, to that records inventory. So you can see on the left side is where it's listing the box number. And so that's that special identifying number. Remember that picture of all those boxes on the shelves? That's that special number that's going to tell the staff where that box is on the shelf so that I can request it and look at it during my visit. And then on the right-hand side is where the contents of the boxes are inventoried and listed. So you can see here in this example, for the court case files, they're listed by file numbers. They're not listed by names. And so you might find that with other record types that you're wanting to look at, that there's not always a name index. So you might have to do a little bit of background research ahead of time so that you can find what file number you might need or a date that you might need rather than a name. So manuscript collections are non-government created records. So we have finding aids for those as well. as well as for the photograph collections. The manuscript collections will have been either created or donated by someone besides a state agency. So the creator of the record, or sometimes the donor, was a private individual or organization. We separate these from state records, which are received as part of regular state business, like records disposition. And it's important to note also that some government records do include photographs. So this portion of the presentation pertains to the photograph collections that were donated by private individuals or organizations. And you can get to those finding aids using the link circled here. It's the link just next to the process state and local records link that we looked at earlier, and it says processed manuscript and photograph collections. So when you click on that, it'll take you to a page that looks pretty similar to that table listing that we saw for the process state and local records page. So this is a screenshot of the top of the processed manuscript and photograph collections webpage. The links under the title column, just the same as the other page, will take you to finding aids that are available online through Tarot. And again, you can search this list of finding aids using the Control F or the Command F function on your keyboard so that you can search for the collection name or the subject name if you know it. You can also just browse through the table, just going alphabetical if you want, but sometimes people know exactly what they're looking for. So doing that Control F or that Command F can be a little bit of a shortcut. In our next webinar in March, we'll go into more detail about TSLAC's photograph collections. So if you're interested to learn more about that, be sure to sign up. Now we'll move on to the online catalog, which is another way that you can search for archival materials. The online catalog will show brief descriptions of our archival records as well as published works. And this option may be preferred by those who are more familiar with library research because you can use some of the strategies that you already know. So here's a view of our online catalog. The URL is shown here and can also be found from our website. There are different search strategies to try, but one of the most basic is a words or phrase search. Terminology that might be more familiar to you would be keyword search. When you type something into the search box and hit enter on your keyboard, this is the default type of search that the catalog does. So the catalog will search for instances of your word anywhere in the item record, and your results will be all hits for that word. So for example, if you type in ranger, you won't just get results for the law enforcement group, you'll also get results for the city ranger, Texas wildlife ranger reports, and lots more. If you want to search for a phrase, you can put the words in quotation marks. So I have done a sample search here using the words or phrase option, and I've used the words Texas breweries. So one of the ways that you can use this keyword search to your advantage is if you don't know the name of the state agency or organization that oversees or is related to your research topic. So here, for my research purposes, I don't know what state agency or organization, what that would have been called for Texas breweries. So I'm just doing this online keyword search in the catalog because I don't know the agency name to look for in the finding aids. So I've got 4 results. There are 2 results for books and 2 results for archival records. And the books might cite archival records or mention other things that I'll want to know for my research. So I'll look at those later. But for now, we'll focus on the archival results. And there's a result here, the last one, number 4, for Texas Brewers Institute records. And that sounds promising to me. So I'll click on the blue hyperlinked title to see the catalog record. So when I click on that, it gives me a little bit more information about this collection. Now I know how many cubic feet and boxes that I might be working with, but I want to narrow it down even more. So I'm going to click on the red link, which will take me to the finding aid. And this should look pretty familiar because we looked at finding aids a few minutes ago. So I'll use the table of contents to navigate. And we'll say after reading some of the higher level information, like the overview, the agency history, and the organization, I'm ready to try and find some specific records for my research. So I'll look under the description of series, which is when it's going to start giving me the inventory of those records. And I see that there is a series called History of Beer Brewing, and that covers my topic, my time period, so I'm going to click on that. So it takes me further down the finding aid where I get that folder inventory. I see box numbers here and the contents of those boxes. So now I've narrowed it down even more to just a couple boxes and less cubic feet. So that's how I was able to narrow this down. So let's go back to the online catalog and try another search. So this time I'm doing research about the Texas Capitol building, and I know the name of the agency that created the records. It's the Capitol Building Commission. So I'll type that into the search box, and this time, instead of clicking words or phrase or hitting enter, I will click the author button to do an author search using those words that I've typed in. So I got 7 results. And again, some are for books that I will want to look at, but I also see an archival collection that includes architectural drawings, which I think will be a great complement to my research. So I will click on the red hyperlink and just go straight to the finding aid. So in reading the overview, I find out that some of the drawings are digitized and part of the Texas Digital Archive, or TDA for short. Not pictured here, but further down the finding aid, there is a link directly to the digitized Capitol Building Commission records in the TDA. So I can look at the records online, which saves me a trip to Austin. So when you're looking through finding aids, keep an eye out for notes about digitized records and links to the TDA. So that might save you some time. We are digitizing more and more of our collection so that you can make the most of your research time. And lastly, let's cover a few research tips that might help you. So government records are organized by agency. When using government records for research, think about which agencies would have created the types of records you need. If you're doing genealogy, you'll want to consider what interactions your ancestor or the person you're researching had with the government and what types of records would have resulted from that. For example, if you know they served a sentence in the state penitentiary, the government would have created records of that. You'll want to narrow by scope and date rather than name. Many finding aids are not name indexed, but will have a narrative description of the records and box number inventory to narrow things down. For unprocessed records, staff can search our holdings, but again, it will help us if you can narrow down agencies, types of records, and time periods as much as possible. If you don't have a specific date and the collection is not indexed, you may need to go through more materials, so be sure to plan ahead for that. Think creatively. Oftentimes, you will need to reframe your research in different ways to cross out the most possibilities. For example, if you're researching a government agency that was involved in a court case, in addition to requesting the agency's records, court records are a possibility. And you might need to do more background research on a topic to get ideas of what other agencies could have been involved with that topic. For example, if you're researching Texas cattle, the Texas Department of Agriculture is the most obviously related agency, but there could also be governor's records or Texas Ranger records if there were hot topic issues that needed to be enforced or addressed by the government. Also, be patient with yourself. Archival research can be hard work, sometimes even more so when the records were created and organized a long time ago. But it can also be really rewarding and fun, so don't give up and ask us if you need help or ideas. You can contact us by mail, phone, or email. Our standard response time is 7 to 10 business days, but do let us know if you have a deadline for your request that requires a response sooner, and we'll do our best to work within your timeline. When contacting us, it's helpful to provide as much information as possible, as I mentioned, like collection titles or box numbers, for us to better assist you. But if you don't have collection titles or box numbers, just let us know what you're researching and we can point you in the right direction. If you're researching collections at the Sam Houston Regional Library and Research Center in Liberty, we recommend that you contact them directly. So in summary, we covered how to use finding aids, how to search the online catalog for archival materials, and some tips for archival research. So thanks, and I'll pass it back to Peggy.